Rogue Startups podcast, where two startup founders are sharing lessons learned and pitfalls to avoid in their online businesses. And now, here's Dave and Craig.
All right, welcome to episode 152 of Rogue Startups. Today, Craig and I decided to do something a little bit different. There was a tweet a little while ago from Josh Pigford, and he had this unbelievably detailed spreadsheet appealing very much to my obsessive-compulsive disorder and anal retentiveness of all the side projects he had ever engaged in, how much they made, how much he spent. And Craig and I thought, wouldn't this be hilarious if we actually went back and pulled all of our stuff and did the same thing?
Yeah.
And just writing it all down, we've been like chuckling to ourselves. I mean, just over and over about the stupidity and the sheer boneheadedness looking back, 9 years for me of all the dumb decisions I've made.
Well, I mean, I think the thing, like, at looking at both of our lists is, like, the audacity of some of the things we tried to do without any knowledge or context in any of these spaces. So, yeah, I mean, it's a healthy thing to reflect on, and I think about a lot of these failures kind of regularly in the lens of, like, what am I doing now, and am I about to make that same kind of decision again? So hopefully us kind of dragging ourselves through the mud here today helps us think about, like, what we're doing right now, and are we making the same mistakes and we just don't realize it because it's in the moment. And for folks listening, like, maybe it triggers a thought to them with, like, oh wow, I'm the dumpster that's on fire. I just don't know it yet. I better get out here quickly before this turns bad. So. Yeah, Dave, this is not going to be this will be a funny episode, but it won't be a fun episode, I guess.
Well, yes, it's funny. It's definitely funny. But yes, so how do you want to start? So
I want to start with something unrelated. So I wanted to give a shout out to James Kennedy. So a really nice and thoughtful comment from our last episode on the website. So roguestartups.com. Always please feel free to leave us a comment on any episode, and James left a really nice comment about the struggles and the ups and downs of the grind that we're all in. And so I know James gave a talk at MicroConf Europe this past month, so October, I guess. And yeah, I would love to have him on the show to talk about LinkedIn prospecting, because I know that's what he talked about at MicroConf Europe, and is something I think that we all definitely could look at. It might not be perfect for everybody's business, but I think it's definitely something that some folks could definitely look at, especially more in the kind of consulting and B2B space. So, James, thanks so much for the comments, and for everyone else out there, get off your ass, leave a comment, let us know that you're alive and listening, and we really appreciate it, because it totally makes Dave and I realize that there are people out there that are enjoying what we're saying and maybe learning something along the way too. So, thanks, James.
Indeed, thank you. So, blog comments aside, do you want to do the list of our failures here alphabetically or chronologically?
Oh, gosh. I think chronologically makes the most sense. And I have to ask Dave about cronless as the first one on your list to make a bit of a pun.
Yes. So, the very first business I bought off of Flippa was an online cron generator and you're probably sitting here thinking to yourself, why in the world, Dave, would you ever want a site that basically ran cron jobs for other sites? It seems so stupid when you look at it on the surface. There were two things that were appealing to it. Number one, it was in my price range. Because I got it for $1,200, and second of all, it looked like on the surface, and this is where my naivete came into play. It looked like it had customers. It looked like it was stuff that I could, like, revamp. They didn't have a pricing page. They didn't have landing pages for advertising. The site was a mess to navigate. There were just a lot of things about it that it seemed like they were very fixable, especially after I had been in the Micropreneur Academy for a while. And I wanted really to dive in and try all the things that I've been learning on something. And so I talked to my wife and I said, what's the absolute largest amount of money that if I flushed it down the toilet, you wouldn't be too mad? And she said, you can have $2,000 to play with.
Okay.
And that's what I got. And at the end of 2009, the truth is I had flushed a good portion of it down and then made some of it back. But it was still kind of a mess.
Yeah.
I'm glad I had the experiment, but yeah, it still exists. If you go to cronless.com, it's still basically the same site I revamped and sold in 2010.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so what's hilarious. The lesson there? I want to make sure we get a lesson, and you have to hold me accountable on my failures for the lesson that we learned.
Yeah, the lesson is you really have to understand a market. You've got to understand buyer intent. You've got to solve a problem. Like, this was not a burning problem. It was a minor problem. It was definitely a vitamin, not an aspirin.
Okay.
And you've got to have a market. Like, this was teeny, teeny, tiny. It was great for me at the time to sort of sink my teeth in and get started, and I lost no money on it. If you can believe that, I actually took it, found out it was full of fraudulent customers, got rid of all of that crap, fixed the site, got some real customers, got it making $100 a month. I thought this was a huge achievement at the time, and I sold it for exactly what I bought it for.
Yeah.
So I got that under my belt, and then I felt pretty good about it. I, of course, turned around and screwed up 2 other times on 2009 by buying a stupid starter site called fishtankaquariums.net that was basically a worthless piece of junk, $275. If you don't have customers and traffic and a market to address, this was an affiliate site, basically just doing fish tank aquarium sales through Amazon, I think it was at the time. Or maybe it was through another affiliate program. I don't even remember. But I spent whatever it was on the site, $275 is a guess. Bought it on Flippa, couldn't promote it, couldn't figure out how to make it work, and it just was crap. I shut it down. And then I did another one with MD5 generator. So for those of you who are computer science nerds in the audience, MD5 hashes are trivial to generate. But there was a site out there where you could type in a string and actually have it get an MD5 hash of anything. And I bought it super cheap, and I was going to do AdSense on it because it actually had some pretty decent traffic to it. And whatever I bought it for, I think it was like $175. I put some AdSense ads on it, didn't really return much, and I'm pretty sure I sold it for about what I bought it for. So it was more experience in the buying and selling, but it really never turned into anything. Again, there was just no problem to solve there. Like, there were people out there searching for this thing, but why the hell would they pay for it? Why the hell would they click on the ads on here? It didn't fit. It didn't make sense.
Yeah. That one makes me think of like speedtest.net, which is a super awesome thing for like determining your Wi-Fi speed. It seems like it could be something. I don't know how popular MD5 generation is, but like I can see those kind of sites being actually pretty strong little businesses. So yeah, not at all in all like a terrible idea, but just maybe the demand wasn't there.
No, there definitely was not.
So my list is broken out a little bit into like before starting Podcast Motor and everything since then, I guess, because I really actually had my head down pretty decently after I started Podcast Motor. But my first 2 ones that I'll talk about are before that and are very classic, like, I'll just figure it out things. Like, so just like, I have no idea what I'm going to do, but this is like a need and an area in the market, I think. I'll just do this as both of them were services, actually, businesses. And the first one I called Outsource Hound and was a done-for-you outsourcing service to the Philippines. So
that sounds like it could have been good.
Yeah, no, it totally could have been good. And there's Virtual Staff Finders from Chris Ducker, which is a very successful business. I am a multiple-time customer of them. And yeah, this is absolutely a good idea. I shit, I could or would do this again in the future now that I know something. But I mean, this was like, I had just started listening to Smart Passive Income and maybe Startups for the Rest of Us podcasts. I had no idea about anything, and I had like whatever the opposite of imposter syndrome is to think like, I'll just be the expert and people will pay me money for it. And I mean, it was very classic, like no traffic, no offer, no hook, no anything. And I don't even think I spent more than a couple months on this, but I think my lesson with this was like getting ahead of myself a little too much, like thinking I can just do this and figure it out as we go without understanding any of the real like business things about like traffic and sales and offer and things like that. And I don't, I don't know that I learned a ton from this, but I guess I learned a lot that it didn't go anywhere because this wasn't like a burning issue that I obviously could solve for people, and so there was not like a value proposition there. So yeah, that was my first one. There was not a ton of skin lost in this, because the nice thing about productized services or services in general is you just pay $12 for a domain, stick up a WordPress site, and go. And so I spent whatever $12 on this and maybe a couple months, and nothing happened. And so that wasn't like the end of the world. But that was my first kind of failure, I guess. And this is timing wise, Dave, I got started later than you did. This is probably 2013, I guess, something like that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. 2012, maybe. Yeah.
All right. Well, so the Cronless thing was like 2009 for me. So this was a long time ago. And between 2010 and 2012, there's just a whole string of shite. I mean, there was literally one thing that came out of 2011 that ever made something, and that was AWPCP. That's when I bought AWPCP. I purchased it for about $1,300 on Flippa. It was making about $300 a month.
That's a fucking steal. I mean, that's what, 4 times revenue? That's
it fantastic. This woman was drowning in support. She just did not set up a site for sales. She didn't know how to set up a customer support forum. I mean, this was truly a diamond in the rough. I thought, okay, well, this is just better than Cronless, right? So
yeah.
I got a pretty good chance at making this one work. But it was surprise. It was definitely a surprise to me. I don't even remember if it was making quite a $300 a month. Maybe it was making less, like 100 and something a month, because that would make more sense, because I bought it for like a year's worth of income.
Still, that's fantastic. Yeah.
It was really fantastic. But let's talk about all the crap that wasn't fantastic. So I did a whole string of job search sites. So there was like pipe fitter jobs and HVAC employment and other high-value keywords. So I was basically just like going on the Google keyword tool and trying to find keywords that had pretty high search intent and high AdSense prices. And then I would build sites around them and then go out and spend money on one of those SEO services to link the crap out of the site, put content on the site, and just try to AdSense monetize these sites. I think I built like 5 of them. 2 of them kind of took off to where I was getting maybe like $50 to $100 a month out of AdSense on them, something like that. And I think I sold those 2 on Flippa for not too much money.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another site that I tried to buy on Flippa that was about health insurance. It was called medicalhealthinsurance.net or medicalhealthinsurance.com or something. It was this content-rich AdSense site that was all about buying medical insurance. So I tried bidding on it. I failed. It was really high. It was like $65,000 or something. It would have been my biggest purchase to date. And at the end, I was talking with, I think it was either Rob or somebody on the Micropreneur Academy, and they're like, why don't you just try to build it for that kind of money? I mean, if you sank a couple $1,000s into it and these keywords are really as lucrative as you say, you could really come out with something.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried it. I tried to build it. I tried to duplicate the site. I had a similar domain name. I tried to do the same strategy I did with the job search. Just never panned out the same way. Like there was clearly a lot of previous time that went into that. So that never panned out. I also did one on credit reports that was the same kind of thing. And then in 2011, this was a fun one. So there was an article in Parenting Magazine that talked about Playdate My Family. And of course, as a dad at the time, I had like a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. So one of the things that, you experience this as well is that as an adult with a bunch of kids, it's hard to find other families where your kids can go socialize with the kids and you can be with some other parents that don't drive you nuts, right?
Yep.
To get that all to line up is kind of a pain in the ass. So this article talked about the struggle of that, and I looked at that and I went, playdatemyfamily.com. I need to build that right now. And I jumped on it.
This is like 3 o'clock in the morning, right? You had this realization? That's always when the best ideas come.
Yeah, kind of. And so then like the next day I went to try to get the domain. I got playdatemyfamily.net. Somebody had already bought the .com. Same person with same kind of ideas. So I contacted them. I reached out. I negotiated with them. I paid they wanted like $5,000 or $3,000 for the domain. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And I talked them down to $675 or something like that for the domain. And I was like, all right, I can part with that. So then I bought like some dating site software and I customized it so it would be like, instead of, who is it you're looking for in college education and, income levels and all this other crap, we made it more family friendly. And I say it was actually just me. Built this whole thing, put it out there, tried to promote it, got links to it, just fucking crickets.
Yeah. Two-sided marketplace as a first time. Yeah.
This was my first experience with a marketplace, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
There weren't enough families there signed up to make it interesting, and therefore the people that were browsing didn't want to stick around. So you got hammered on both sides of it.
Yeah.
And it became location specific because, somebody in New York doesn't give a crap about people that are in California.
Right. It's even harder. Yeah.
You had to basically launch in market specific places. So then I tried to hone it down to just the Denver area, and I couldn't make that work. So I shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, there were some other ones. I also started doing the how to buy a website. It took me about 3 or 4 months to write that guide. And I launched that and I promoted it, and it made a little bit of money. It wasn't that lucrative. I still get some people that are asking about the book, and people were always like, oh, you must have made money with that. And I'm like, well, yeah, I did make some money. It was about $1,200. So it was definitely not life-changing, and it certainly did not make up for the 3 or 4 months that it took me to write it and format it and distribute it and promote it. And
that, Dave, I think that is the lesson of the episode right there, is like the opportunity cost of these side projects is normally by far the biggest cost, because we're not spending a ton of money on any of these things, but it's the time we're not spending doing something else that's actually productive. For me, that's like, I look at all this shit that we both wrote up in 2 pages of a Google Doc of just our failures. And it's like, if we would have spent all of this time doing anything basically worthwhile, we would both be wildly successful, right?
Well, we'd like to think that anyway.
No, but seriously, I mean, if you said like,
yeah,
I'll even pick an example of a failure, and I'll pick yours. But if you would have said in 2010, I'm going to start Support Find, and fuck it, I'm going to do this no matter what, you would be Help Scout today, right?
It's quite likely I could have been, yes.
Yeah, and myself the same. If I would have started Castos in 2012 when I got started, I would be Simplecast, maybe, the second or third biggest podcast hosting platform. And And so for me, not to preach too much for both of us. I mean, and I don't mean to sort of speak down or anything, but for me, when I look at all of these things, I think I spent a night or a weekend or 2 weeks or whatever on all of this shit that has had no potential and took away from other businesses that were actually doing something. That's why I get mad at myself. It's like, what the fuck was I thinking? I had something good going on over here. I should just do more of the good thing instead of chasing this other thing that seems cool, Yeah,
well, I mean, it's so easy to say that in retrospect, but at the time...
No, but that's the lesson, right?
That's the lesson, yeah. I mean, you have to really be ruthless about the opportunities you want to pursue, and you got to make sure that you've got enough potential in there, that the market's big enough, that you know what the pain is, you know how to address the pain, you can get an audience, and all of those things lining up in a critical way makes for a much more successful product launch. Because I can look back at everything that didn't pan out, and one or more or sometimes all of those key things were missing just because I was pig-headed about it, and I was like, I'm sure this is going to work because I see this working over here, so it must be working for me.
Yeah.
Or it must be viable for me. And it's not. It's absolutely not. It's only viable if you've got all of those things lining up.
No, for sure. I mean, I think that it's easy to say if you just focus on a thing, it'll be successful. Not true. But I think that like the opportunity cost when you talk about side projects is the real killer of anyone's overall success, yours and mine, and Josh Pigford's and everybody else's. So,
well,
I was a customer of howtobuyawebsite.org. I bought your book, and that's how we got connected for the podcast. And here we are, fucking 3 years later, right?
Right. I mean, I definitely got some interesting relationships out of How to Buy a Website, and there was plenty of interaction and discussion with other people about it. It just wasn't financially lucrative, and that's what I learned about that market. There were a lot of people that were interested in it, but there were a lot of people that were not necessarily willing to spend a lot of money on that. And, I tried a variety of things like a more upscale product, and that had zero traction. And then I tried to reduce the price, and we know where that goes.
Yep. Right.
And that just, I sold some, but they didn't want to do anything else. And then when I tried to get other people to promote this in their audiences, they were kind of like, well, this is content that we give away for free. And I was like, holy shit, you give away something that took me 4 months to write for free? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, oh God, so I didn't understand. I didn't understand the audience. I didn't understand the promotion aspect of it. You think that you did. I got the material. I mean, you read the book, and there were some good things in there, and a lot of things that I learned and gotchas that I had suffered through on Flippa. And if you look at my list here on this Google Doc, I mean, there's some pretty bad things. Like, I bought an affiliate site. I bought an affiliate site about how to set up gumball machines. That's right, gumball machines. I was that dumb. Yes, I did it because it looked like it was making money. Turned out that the guy actually had a duplicate site of the same content, wasn't selling that domain. And as soon as I got a hold of the site, I found the duplicate site, and then I was like, what the hell, dude? And he stopped talking to me. So, I wasted $300 buying a site that tanked.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah, I spent a lot of money on dumb stuff like that. So, it happens. It happens.
Yeah. So my next one, actually, again, could have been a cool business. Of course, that's why I started it. I was calling it Elite Webinars, and this was so I don't know if you, Dave, or anyone listening knows of Lewis Howes. He's like a big webinar guru, and it's just made a fuck ton of money doing webinars for people and to his audience, and as a third party to promote stuff on a webinar and stuff like that. But I got hearing about webinars, wow, this sounds like a great make money online kind of thing. I'll provide articles and coaching and tutorials and all this kind of stuff, primarily as an affiliate site to sell webinar hosting software. and then maybe thinking I could pivot it into my own platform or coaching service or something like that down the road. And yeah, very much like, again, just like the first one, no audience, no traffic, no interest, no value proposition, no fucking anything. And it just went nowhere. I mean, it was actually similar to the first one now that I'm looking at them, in that they were service businesses where I didn't know anything about the topic. And it's not surprising it didn't go anywhere because I didn't have any authority to talk about the problem and the value that I would try and provide. And yeah, I guess fortunately I didn't spend a ton of time or money, maybe a few months on this, and it just didn't go anywhere and shut it down. So that's kind of my second lesson there, I guess.
Yeah, it's rough, especially when you feel like you've repeated the same mistake twice.
Yeah. No, I never realized it until just right now. But yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure that if I were to go back and list the actual mistakes that I made on individual sites here, I'm certain that I repeated mistakes way more than twice. Or sometimes, what's actually worse is to get lucky one time and then you substitute that luck for thinking that you're smart.
The bias of success, yeah.
Yeah, the success bias gets you in there, and you think that you can repeat that success, but you actually had luck. And so then you try to do that, and then you have multiple failures that follow that.
Yeah.
And that was partially what happened to me in 2012.
Yeah. Yeah.
I bought several AdSense sites, and this is when I was kind of starting to upscale my purchasing. So I bought one on college financial aid, and it was making about $11,000 a year. I think I bought it for $14,000. And so I started expanding the content. I fixed some things on it. I got kind of nervous about making some big changes because I didn't want to really interrupt the revenue stream. And that's the thing. I was trying to create all of these things to, you remember the famous, get your passive income in 2012, right? So
that's when I got started.
Yeah. So there were all these things about passive income this and passive income that, and AdSense sites were a great way to, quote, get passive income. So I had been trying to build them in 2011, couldn't really make that. Build it from scratch just took a long time. So I was like, all right, screw this, I'm going to buy one. And so I bought one, and I was like, wow, hey, look, this one's actually doing pretty good. So I ended up buying a couple more to go with it, and I even trying to build some that, like, I did cross-linking on them, and I set them up on different ISPs, and I paid for SEO to sort of boost their rankings, and then I was getting up in these financial aid things so that I could actually do affiliate marketing for financial aid packages. So there were all these ad networks you could sign up for. It wasn't just AdWords and AdSense, although I was doing that too. The bigger money was to be made on the side, where you basically doing CPLs, cost per lead. And for a while, like 18 months, it seemed like it was going up. And then Google started issuing algorithm changes.
The Panda and Penguin.
The Panda Penguin started coming out. Now, It didn't hit me initially, but the first couple made me nervous. And I had heard other people on the Micropreneur Academy get nervous, and so I was actually kind of smart. I was deep in at this point. Like I think I had like around 8 or 9 AdSense sites. So I had ones on 401ks and dividend stocks and Perkins loans and financial aid for single moms and Get Pell grants and a grant called the FSEOG. I mean, it was a lot. My exposure there was huge. So I decided I was going to sell my more lucrative sites. So I put them up on Flippa, and in the end, I actually cashed out. And I was good. Like, I think whatever I had put into all of these things here, I remember cashing out for about $53,000.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, but I put in a pretty substantial amount to get there. But I came out with $53,000 in the end, and the people that took those sites were pretty happy with them because it looked like they had this long history. But then 6 months, 12 months later, Panda and Penguin came hard and fast, and they just started doing like every 2-week updates. And eventually, every single site that I had, I kept tracking them for a while. They all went in the toilet. All of them. So, yeah, I got out of that. And I was thinking, oh, see, I made $53,000. I'm a smart guy.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to buy a different site. That was UW Robot, which later got renamed to Schedule Watcher. I bought that one for about $65,000, and it was making, I don't remember how much it was making, like $43,000 a year. But it was like very low priced. It was very bursty, and it was one college. So I didn't learn my lesson of like, here's one platform and one place that if somebody changes stuff, you're screwed. And sure enough, 18 months later, the hammer came down, and basically UW, University of Washington, passed some things. They shut off some APIs, and they set up policies directed specifically at me to shut me down because I had this paid service that their students were using and liking. But it totally screwed me. In the end, I'm pretty sure I made back what I had paid into it. So I had gotten $65,000 out after paying $65,000, but after that it was done. It just died on the vine right there. So the thing that I thought I was, getting smart and avoiding over here, I just got lucky, and then I turned around and put it into something else and got screwed.
Yeah. That's tough, man. That's tough. Yeah, I mean, we talked about like platform risk a lot, and that's definitely significant, as you saw. Like that's a killer. So this is, I guess, so after my first two failures is, I started this podcast. It was by myself for the first, I don't know, Dave, 5 episodes or something like that. And then you came on as the co-host. And in the process of that, I said, this is a pain in the ass. And I came up with the idea for Podcast Motor, not an original idea. There were other people doing it already. But kind of said, wow, this would be like a pretty good service. I can charge what I thought then was a bunch of money, which it is. It's like a pretty good amount of money. And so Podcast Motor started after my first 2 failures, which I think overall is like a decent kind of like hit to miss ratio. But so I ran that for a while, and then I think what I would consider my next big failure is decided, kind of like I have with Castos, I should try to make like this into a software business. And so we built 2 different software tools in the Podcast Motor brand. One is a WordPress theme that is still out there and available and powering a couple dozen sites. And actually, it's a really beautiful theme that we sold through the Podcast Motor brand. And I spent, I don't know, thousands of dollars having someone develop, Bootstrap and all this kind of stuff, and sold, 10 copies of it maybe. And so that was a total fucking waste of time and money and resources and attention. And then did the same thing with a media player. So like a really popular media player is from Pat Flynn's, the Smart Podcast Player. He makes a ton of money selling this thing. And I was like, I could do the same thing, but wouldn't it be cool if you could do like email gating or like an email pop-up that's integrated with the podcast player? And I still think this is like a pretty fair idea. And actually the guy who is the technical founder of Lead Pages is doing this now with the Lead Player, I think is what it's called. It's a video player that gates video content with an email pop-up form. And so I thought the Podcast Motor player would be great. When you click play, it starts a timer, and after 60 seconds, it pops up a thing that says, hey, if you want to listen to the rest of us, enter your email here to continue getting access to this episode. And again, I still think it's like a fairly decent idea, but I had no idea how to sell this. Like Podcast Motor as a service was, I don't know, doing like $10,000 a month, maybe something like that. And I was struggling to like keep up with this as like a service and growing a team and organizing it and stuff, because I'm not an organized person. And I decided like, we have this extra money. I still have a day job, so I can just spend this money doing something else without thinking like, is this strategic? Is this smart? Could this ever be like a business by itself? And all this kind of shit. And I didn't sell one fucking copy of it. So,
Ouch.
yeah, so between the two kind of software tools that were built into Podcast Motor, spent tens of thousands of dollars and sold whatever a couple $100 worth of product. So yeah, that's my lesson: is don't do that. If you have a service business, love that you have a service business. It's a great way to make money and a great lifestyle business, but don't try to turn it into a SaaS product.
Well, at least not ones that don't make sense, right? Because obviously there are some productized services that can turn into SaaS products, but yeah, in that case, that was definitely not working. No.
Yeah. And fuck, I might be able to do it now. I don't know. Like, I'm smarter now and I have more experience now. I don't know. Maybe I could do it now, but yeah, I didn't have the marketing chops and the positioning of either of these products to make them be successful. Is kind of my lesson. Like, I had the business and a little bit of an audience, but I didn't know how to sell a software product then, which is a bummer because I think they're both kind of decent ideas. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a skill, and for a guy that like comes out of sales, for you to say that, how do the rest of us mere mortals? If you have all this sales experience and then you suddenly feel like you can't sell a software product online, for those of us that don't have that sales experience, I mean, that's even more daunting, right?
No, but I mean, that's a really fair point. Is like, just because you can do A doesn't mean you can do B, right? Like, just because you know how to sell a thing doesn't mean you can sell some other totally unrelated thing. In a lot of cases, it's the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to know where your weaknesses are and then find ways to shore those up. I think that's the lesson you want to take away from there.
Yep.
And don't take too big of a leap, which gets to my next one. So we've talked about this on the podcast before, but I'll give you the specifics in the timeline now. So in 2014, I got this crazy idea that I could replicate another customer support app and do it in a time frame that was fast, I guess you'd say, with one person, one developer, myself, doing the marketing and the user interface and all the use cases. But I hadn't really done any customer research, and I hadn't really put together an audience to try to promote this to, and I hadn't gotten any pre-sales, and I hadn't really gotten any pain points from anybody saying, what really sucks about customer support software is X. So I got none of that, and I just said, fuck it, I'm going to build Support9.
Yeah.
So in 2014, I started down that greased pole to hell. And after $50,000 and 18 months of development, I shut it down in August of 2015. And that's when the real hunt started for a business that I could have a built-in market and customers already there. And this is, ultimately what turned into Recapture in December 2016. But after burning that much money and time on one project, I mean, I was seriously fried after that. I had learned a lot of things about it, the market pain point thing being the key one, but just I burned myself out on that, and then it took me like 18 months to really sort of get my mojo back and decide that there was the right business. Plus, it took me that long to find something. And that whole time, we had been podcasting, because this is the time that we had started podcasting, was when I was in the middle of doing Support9. And this was, a documented journey of disaster. But that's exactly what happened here. I just took too big of a leap. I had been doing the plugins, I had been doing these things, but I never had a true plan to basically build a SaaS around something. If I had a way to build a SaaS around the plugins, I would have probably had better success, because I had an audience, I had paying customers, I had an email list, substantial. So at least I had something to start with. I had something to launch from. Maybe it wouldn't have been like wildly successful, but that at least I had the basis of something to work with. And I didn't really have that with Support Vine, and that was a major, major mistake. Yeah. Not to mention paying $50,000 to a guy who didn't turned out know what the fuck he was doing and building it in the first place. And it took me, like 12 months to kind of figure that out, which was pretty sad. And then the last 6 months, I had two other guys that were working on it that did know what they were doing, but that's when it became just abundantly clear that lack of a market. The first
guy didn't know what the fuck he was doing.
Well, there was that, but I mean, just the lack of a market. I kept talking to people, and they're like, "Why are you building features? Do you have an audience? Who's this for? What pain point are you solving?" Like, I just kept hearing that from various people at MicroConf and private conversations, and it was like, oh shit! I just had this horrible, horrible feeling in the back of my head that I was screwing up big time. And some very tough conversations later, I was like, "All right, we're shutting this down."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'll summarize the traction book. There's 2 traction books, Dave, right? The one traction book.
Yeah, which one? Is this the Weinberg book?
Right, yeah, about marketing. Says that when you're building a tool, you should still spend 50% of your time and resources on marketing and customer development, and 50% of your time on actually building the tool. And not to preach, because I've definitely screwed that pooch. But yeah, that's like a lesson that is stuck in my head. I mean, I read that book and I was like, that's the only thing that really matters out of this book. I mean, they give the framework for testing all this stuff and the bullseye and all this kind of stuff. But like, even when you're starting, spend 50% of your time talking to customers if you have nothing to talk about, is like the lesson I would like to share with everybody, because I've definitely screwed this up. But yeah, I think if you can do that, then when you're building, you're going to build the right things. And that's the key. It's not to just go fucking build this thing that nobody wants, which is the death trap of a lot of this stuff for us.
Yeah, or building something that's too big that you're not quite ready to manage.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like just going straight to SaaS. Some people can do it. And I don't want to say it's impossible, it's never been done, because it has been. I would be lying to say that. But at the same time, I don't think that everybody is capable of just going from 0 to 10K a month in a SaaS. Like that's unicorn stuff, that doesn't happen. There's so much that is between 0 and that 10K that you have to master, or find people that can master and pay them to do it for you. Or get them on board and sell your vision or whatever, and get them to work for sweat equity. And God bless you if you can do that. But I don't know a lot of bootstrappers that can pull that off.
Yep.
So there's just so much that you have to master in between those two, that it's not an easy thing to get to. And this is why, like, Rob talks about stair stepping all the time and trying to go from smaller stuff about ebooks and productized services, and then plugins and platform-specific things, and then build that into a full-fledged SaaS. Because at each level, you learn so much, and then move it up to the next level. Mm-hmm. But even then, like, I got to the plugin level, and I was thinking I was smart enough to do a SaaS, and I still screwed up and made plenty of mistakes, and didn't even heed the own lessons that I thought I had learned. Yeah. So, know thyself, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Know thyself. So my next 2 are after, I don't know, having a decently successful business and just getting shiny object syndrome. I think this is, for me, like the perennial lesson and warning of, like, if you have something that's working, don't go looking for something else. Like, you're already married. Don't go clubbing, like, stay home, work on your business, so my first one, again, I think it's a fantastic idea. I wish somebody would build this. So I bought, on a Saturday afternoon, the kids were watching cartoons. I was like, I need this thing. And I called it Post Scout, postscout.io. I don't know if it's still available or I own it or whatever, but it was basically product hunt for blog posts, because I kept thinking, like, I want to read more blog posts that other people I know find interesting. And this doesn't exist. Inbound.org kind of does this with, like, upvoting articles, but there's a shit ton of people on there that I don't know, and I don't want to, like, trust their opinion on an article. I want to say, like, of the people I follow on Twitter, who recommends an article. And so I'll just go read those articles. That's like, peer aggregated and reviewed content. And so I was like, oh, let's fucking build this. Oh, there's a WordPress plugin that basically does what Product Hunt does. I'll go do this. And like, I spent about 2 weeks on this. Dave, this is only like a year ago. I never talked about it. I never talked about it to anybody outside of like a couple Slack groups that I'm in. And really quickly, everybody was like, this is like a long game and you have to fuck ton of traffic, and how are you going to deal with spammers and all this kind of stuff? And like, Dave, this I think typing this story out made me think of maybe our next episode is like, what are the businesses we wish we could run? Because this is the opposite of that, right? Like, this is like thousands of users and not really having any way to make money and all this kind of stuff. And like, the business I wish I could run is the opposite of that. So, my lesson there is, one, if you have a business that's working and is providing for your family and all this kind of stuff, don't go looking for another thing to do. And definitely don't go like coming up with an idea for like a two-sided marketplace starting from scratch. It's like the stupidest fucking thing I can ever imagine. But that was my idea. Actually, I think maybe the Product Hunt guys could roll this. They could roll it out easily, and it would be great. But this doesn't exist, and I thought it would be a good idea. But for me, it's not great.
Yeah, stupidest fucking thing. Here, hold my beer, Craig. So this is definitely more of that shiny object syndrome. So in 2016, of course, this is after Support Vine. This is after I had the plugins, but I was, sort of trying to figure out what's going on here. I'm looking for recapture. I haven't got recapture yet. And I come across two things. One, I'm thinking that I wanted to like expand my plugin business to try to make a bigger footprint. So I'm like, I've got my irons in too many fires at this point. I'm looking for a business on one hand. I'm still doing the plugins. And on top of this, I'm trying to do this third thing here. Like, I couldn't stay focused. So I ended up getting wpcrm.com, which is a fantastic domain. And I'm going to throw this out there in the podcast. If you're out there and you want to build a CRM for WordPress, I will sell you this domain for a very, very reasonable price. I got it for $600. I won't even make you pay that much for it. But if you want it, it's yours. Come talk to me. I'll happily sell it to you. But this was an idea for another plugin, and I took over a CRM plugin, and I was going to like use this domain and build up this plugin, and I was going to integrate it into Business Directory. And I started talking to my developers, and they're telling me all the stuff that needs to happen. And I got one of them starting to work on it, and then I got another plugin, Great Real Estate. It was like real estate listings plugin.
Oh.
And I was going to like monetize this and do premium modules just like I did the other thing. There was so much work. I had 6 months of planned work, and I knew my guys, if it says 6 months there, it isn't going to take them 6 months. Like, they're looking at 9 to 12 months because I'm sure that in there they're going to find stuff, and we're going to be like, oh, no, we have to do this, and we got to change this, and they weren't like super awesome at the UI stuff, so I would have to circle back with them on these things and figure that out. And I was maybe 2 months into this after buying this domain and getting these two plugins and starting to put this work in. It's just a fucking distraction. It was a complete and utter distraction because the business search wasn't going well, and it felt like I had to do something, and this was the wrong thing to do. It was absolutely the wrong thing to do. Neither of these went anywhere. I got the real estate plugin up and working again on WP.org. It's gone now. It's died a quiet death in the background somewhere. It's whimpering in the forest, decaying on the floor somewhere. And the other one never even got past the domain name, and the CRM plugin that I recovered, it never even got relisted up there because it was just so much work. So you can totally get distracted even when you're in the middle of working on stuff because the plugins were still making me money. I still had to manage all the plugins there. I was still looking for a business. I just distracted myself for no good reason there because I felt like I had to. I felt like I needed to do something and try to move things forward, and I did that, and it was the wrong move.
Yep.
Just stupid.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I think especially you've been in the buyer's mindset a lot with a lot of these, and doing nothing as a buyer is really hard, but oftentimes the best thing. So I think folks who are out there looking to buy a SaaS or to buy a WordPress plugin or whatever, doing nothing and passing on good opportunities is not a bad thing. Like, you should pass on good opportunities because that makes you smart. Buying bad opportunities is a surefire way to spend a bunch of money and not get anything out of it.
Yeah, you don't want to pass on good opportunities. You just said pass on good opportunities. You want to pass on the bad opportunities.
No, I mean, I think
the opportunities that are not a good fit.
You should be so discerning that you should pass on good opportunities as opposed to jumping on bad opportunities.
I gotcha. All right, now I understand. Now that makes more sense. I thought you were like, pass all good opportunities. I'm like, that's stupid, Craig. Don't say that.
No. Yeah, I say a lot of stupid shit. No, but you know what I mean? Like, you should be so discerning that taking a year to buy something and passing on good opportunities along the way is cool, and you just got to be okay with that.
Yeah, I get that now. Yes.
Yeah.
These plug-in things would have been a great fit, I think, for somebody who is in a different spot in their journey than I was. But for me, it was just a distraction, complete and utter distraction.
Yeah. So my last one, kind of quickly here, was actually earlier this year. So we have within Podcast Motor a fantastic gal in the Philippines, and she actually has kind of built her own business, and we just kind of work through her for transcription. So I was like, Podcast Motor is a pretty good business. I wonder if we could build Transcript Motor and just go like right up against Rev.com for like on-demand transcripts, human-generated, not like AI or any kind of funny business transcripts. And thinking like, could we somehow hook this into seriously simple podcasting and Castos to where, like, when you upload a file, it gets triggered, the transcript's generated, and then it inserts it right back into like your WordPress site or shoots you an email or something with it. And this never really got anywhere. I think, Dave, I think I might have gotten smart and passed up this opportunity for good reason, because the amount of volume we would have to do with this to make any money would have been astronomical. Yeah, like you look at like Rev.com and the millions of users they have, and it's not like a huge business. I mean, it's a big business, but it's really venture funded and all this kind of stuff. But like, as a bootstrapper, to say like, I'm going to charge $1 a minute of transcripts, and I'm going to have to pay whatever, 50 cents at least, of like raw costs. I'm already 50% out the door. And I'm only making, $20 per customer, $30 per customer, or something like that. And I'm only keeping half of that. I kind of did the math in my head pretty quickly after I started like building the site and figuring out how to make this work with WordPress and coupling all this shit together. Like, this business is never going to go anywhere like I want a business to. Like, at this point, I know that like, Podcast Motor is a good business. I think at this point, Castos is making like decent money. Like, if I'm going to start something else, I need it to be like a business that can be a rocket ship, and like, I'm not going to start another like $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 a month business. I need a business that can be doing like $50,000, not easily or quickly, but has like the relative potential to do that. And so I think, I don't know, this is a failure in that I spent some time on this. I spent a fair amount. I spent about a month kind of nights and weekends thinking about this. But I'm glad like I'd learned the lesson that like at this point in my life and my journey, like this is not the type of business and the business model and the pricing and stuff that I want to go after. So I think for everybody, as like we're getting into these things, like if you're going to start a side business, it should have the potential to be your one thing. And if it doesn't, then like don't make it a business, make it like a hobby, go build model airplanes or something. Cause like that's a lot of like what we want is just like,
that's our advice this week. Go build model airplanes. Business is hard.
But
no, I know what you mean. Product founder fit. It's product founder fit.
Yeah. But it's also like, I think a lot of this stuff is like you and I saying like, I have this need for like a creative outlet. I'm not getting it with my business because I'm bored with it or frustrated or whatever. I need to go start another business. When in reality, we're really saying like, I just need to go do something, and like, it doesn't have to be another business. It can be whatever that's not a business. And maybe that's like a safer, less detrimental thing to what our real businesses are.
Yeah, that's why I garden, because my tomatoes are never going to have like the kind of ROI that a business is, and they're also not going to like totally criticize me if I kill one of them.
They'll just split in half when they're too dry, and you're like, motherfucker.
Yeah. Much lower risk there.
Yeah. So I this has been healthy. This has been healthy exercise for me, Dave. So I hope everybody. Cathartic, yeah.
Yes, the skeletons are out of the closet. If anybody wants to hear more details about any of our skeletons here, we can make an episode on a specific teardown on what we screwed up on all those businesses there. But I think it's been good for that regard.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to remind ourselves, and hopefully other folks can kind of relate to what we're talking about as far as like reasons why some of this stuff was a bad idea to start with or failed. And this has been, I don't know, it's been helpful and insightful. I mean, it's not been fun, but I hope that...
but it also shows how non-linear this journey is,
Oh, totally, yeah.
I went back, as we were cataloging everything, I'm like, man, I mean, I just kept getting slapped in the face so many times, like, what the hell kept me going?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like there was this whole string of successes that made me keep going. I wasn't like coming out with so much cash from year to year that I'm like, oh yeah, dude, this bootstrapping, I'm killing it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that at all. It was a grind for a long time.
Yeah.
So
yep.
If you're feeling like you're in the grind and you're not there yet, believe me, you're not alone on that one. It's going to be a grind, and it will take some time. And if you look at the right things and make some smart choices and ask for some help from smart people, you'll probably get past a lot of those things that you're struggling with right now, right?
Yep, absolutely. No, that's great advice, man. So, hope everybody enjoyed the episode today. If you enjoyed it, share with a friend. That's like our ask, is if you enjoyed the episode, share it with a friend. And like James did for this episode, would love a comment in the below this post on roguestartups.com. Love to hear about some of your experiences and lessons that folks have learned from their failures. We'll be back next week. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. This will go out on Cyber Monday, Dave. So I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving and getting ready for the holidays. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Rogue Startups. If you haven't already, head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the show. For show notes from each episode and a few extra resources to help you along your journey, head over to roguestartups.com to learn more.